Welcome back to this special edition of the Newsmakers. We're spending the entire hour looking at the challenges facing Afghanistan's parliamentary elections this week. And at the top of the list are a series of attacks that have so far killed 11 candidates. The Taliban has claimed responsibility, and many say the group wouldn't be so powerful without the help of Pakistan. Well, some of Pakistan's generals are accused of treating the Taliban as a kind of strategic ally. So will those allegations continue under recently elected Prime Minister Imran Khan? Well, let's go to our panel now. I'm joined by Saad Muhammad in Islamabad. He's a retired brigadier in Pakistan's army. In Washington, D.C. is Omar Samad, who's a former Afghan ambassador to France and Canada. And also in Washington, we have Madiha Afzal. She's a non-resident fellow at the Brookings Institution and author of the book Pakistan Under Siege, Extremism, Society and the State. Thanks all of you for joining us. Ambassador Omar Samad, let me start with you. This election and the build-up to the election has been punctuated by terrible things, mostly violence on behalf of the Taliban. We're also seeing Afghan guards now firing at governors, security chiefs, police chiefs, killing people. When Afghans look at the root of their problems, many point the finger at Pakistan. Do you as well?
Well, I point the finger at the different roots of the problem. This problem in Afghanistan does not have one root, but it has obviously one very important component that feeds it, and that is violence and terrorism. And the violence and terrorism that we have witnessed in Afghanistan, whether it's the past 17 years or the past 25 years since the Taliban emerged, or the past day or the past hour when we heard that in Kandahar, several very high-ranking people were killed by an insider who had infiltrated the security apparatus and apparently, from what the news reports say, fired on these officials. We know that the root causes partly are domestic and partly are outside of the country. There's no more hiding of this. Everybody knows where the leadership of these different organizations reside. We know where the shoras are located. We know how the logistics move. We know, everybody knows this. This is not a secret anymore. They even have admitted it themselves. And so we think that Pakistan has a very important role, but at the same time, it has an important responsibility as a member of the international community to act and abide by not only international rules and laws, but also not to use proxies in a war, in a regional context that hurts not only the countries that are neighboring Pakistan, and in this case Afghanistan, but also eventually is going to, we think, hurt Pakistan itself, and it has hurt Pakistan itself because of the growth of extremism, radicalism, so on and so forth, whatever label you give it. And so that history exists and that reality exists, and we have to deal with it.
Okay, Saad Muhammad, according to Omar Samad, everybody knows where the shuras are, where the leadership resides. It comes from Pakistan. Pakistan's using the Afghan Taliban as a proxy against the government of Afghanistan. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think that's an exaggerated view. Some of the Shura members would be residing in Pakistan, and ex-foreign minister or the advisor on foreign affairs, Mr. Saad Aziz, had admitted that there was certain leadership present in Pakistan. But to say that Pakistan has the capacity to fuel an insurgency in another country with Pakistan's limited resources, I don't think so. Pakistan is in dire financial straits. How can it support an insurgency across the length and breadth of Afghanistan? An insurgency which is very popular and which has taken on mighty alliance like NATO, which has found it difficult to control it. So most of it, the problem lies within Afghanistan. There are foreign troops in Afghanistan. And if you go back to history, if you look at the 19th century, when Great Britain was a superpower, and they invaded Afghanistan twice in the 19th century, there was a huge insurgency in Afghanistan, and the British were forced out of Afghanistan. Now, Pakistan didn't even exist at that time. So there's a domestic dislike for foreign troops in Afghanistan, and as long as foreign troops stay in Afghanistan, there will be some resistance to that presence of foreign troops. This is not what I have written. These are scholars who have written on Afghanistan that whenever there are foreign troops on the soil of Afghanistan, there will be resistance. So there have been three in the last 2 centuries. Great Britain has been there, the Soviet Union has been there, and now NATO and the United States are there.
Okay,
so blaming Pakistan. Now, not only Pakistan is the player.
Okay, Mr. Muhammad.
In the region, India is also there.
Point well received.
Iran is also there.
Point well received,
Turkey is also there.
Certainly, point well received. Let me bring in Madiha Afzal here. Madiha, the Pakistanis believe, and Imran Khan told this to me directly as well, before he was Prime Minister, he said Pakistan is being made a scapegoat for all the failings of NATO, the United States, and the Afghan government. They're blaming Pakistan, but it doesn't check out. Which version of reality is closer to the truth, Madiha?
Well, as with most things, you know, the reality is nuanced, and the story really has to be, it's a bit of all sides of the story. You know, from Afghanistan, you hear the Afghanistan perspective, which blames Pakistan. From Pakistan, actually, you hear a couple of things. You hear that Pakistan is being made to be a scapegoat. Pakistan also points the finger at Afghanistan for attacks that the Pakistan Taliban is now undertaking against Pakistan, because the Pakistan Taliban has largely been driven out of Pakistan's tribal areas. So this is quite a sort of a destructive relationship. There are fingers being pointed on both sides, and they really tend to talk past each other. I will say that Imran Khan, after coming into power, when he gave his inaugural speech on July 26th, he did sort of sound very conciliatory towards Afghanistan. He said, you know, if there's peace in Afghanistan, there will be peace in Pakistan. So I think there is a recognition going forward that it is useful, obviously, for Pakistan to have peace in Afghanistan. However, there seems to be a bit of a holding pattern right now as it pertains to Pakistan. You know, Pakistan is so focused on its economic situation right now that it really is not focusing much on Afghanistan. If there are Haqqani network militants in Pakistan, there was some action being taken against them in early 2018. But since then, things have been quiet on the Pakistani front. So nothing much has changed there. So Pakistan is in kind of a holding pattern right now to sort of see how things develop, and really sort of focused much more internally than it is externally.
Okay, interesting. So Omar Samad, would you accept that Pakistan needs to be in a holding pattern, besides the fact that they need to figure out how to fix a lot of their myriad problems within their own country? But when they look at Afghanistan and they see it get closer with countries such as India, would you maybe forgive the Pakistanis for wanting to keep some of their proxies in their pocket just in case?
I'm not sure exactly what they mean by getting near India. India is far away from Afghanistan, is not an immediate neighbor. India is a historic friend of Afghanistan that goes back hundreds of years. There are very strong people-to-people ties and trade and commerce and business ties with India. There's nothing else that should threaten Pakistan as far as India is concerned. You know, these canards that we hear that have never been proven, they don't you know, have any justification for trying to destabilize Afghanistan. This is not a very well thought out argument. But let me also say that when they don't want to take responsibility, when they are in denial, this is the pattern that we have seen for 17 years, and this is why the international community, the United States and others are now frustrated. And this is why they're asking Pakistan to either have a rethink, or if it continues, then, you know, bear responsibility. People are asking Pakistan to play an active role, but one that is constructive. You know, you can't continue with this double game of trying on one hand to say that I'm anti-terrorism and get all the money that you can, $33 billion of American aid, and then let these sanctuaries and these safe havens operate, and all these the madrasa system produce tens upon tens of thousands of jihadis that are sent for all kinds of activities and are used, as I said, And this, we think, is not only detrimental to us in Afghanistan, and we see how it has hindered our efforts to rebuild Afghanistan after all these years of conflict. And it is trying to destabilize us, and this is not acceptable. And so this is not good neighborliness. So what we need is a change in the way Pakistan looks at its interest, its strategic interest, and work with others to make sure that we find solutions. We're asking for solutions, not the same old, stale rhetoric that we have heard for 17 years and no real action on the ground.
Let me ask you, Saad Muhammad, Brigadier Saad Muhammad, about something very specific. There's an election happening this weekend, and I ask only because you made a parallel between Taliban attacks and resistance against the Russians, resistance against the British more than 100 years ago. So when the Taliban blows up candidates, blows up polling booths, is that resistance against a fraudulent puppet election system? Or do you accept that this is a legitimate democratic election and that the Afghans are embarking on a democratic process and those people that are running for office actually represent Afghanistan?
Killing innocent people, killing unarmed people is terrorism outright. I condemn that severely. Anybody who goes and attacks election booths or they kill candidates is terrorism. And we must all condemn that. It's not acceptable in a civilized society. However, Pakistan has no role there, and there I don't get into the blame game. During our elections, there were two major terrorist attacks. There were minor attacks also, but there were two major attacks, one in Balochistan and one in Pakhtunkhwa in Peshawar, in which hundreds of people were killed in those bomb blasts. And there was a blame game going on that they came from Afghanistan. Probably they did. But it is Pakistan's duty to ensure that its territory is safe from terrorists. It's our duty. Now, there's another country which does not have control over its entire country because of the insurgency going on there. So I will not blame Afghanistan directly for that. We should need to get down, sit down and find ways and means how these terrorists on either side of the Durand line exist and how to get rid of them. Now, that is easier said than done. The problem is the presence of foreign troops. Now, whenever Pakistan gets into a persuasion mood and they would like to persuade the Afghan Taliban to come and sit, the first thing probably they ask is, I have no knowledge, but this is my conjecture, the question they ask is, this government is being propped up by foreign units.
Okay.
And unless we get a program as to when are these foreign troops leaving, then we can discuss. That's why the Taliban say we want to discuss for the United States.
Okay.
Now, I will also, add to this that the elections in Afghanistan must continue. The present government is a legitimate government. It must continue. It is for the Taliban to sit down and discuss. I fully support that. And whether with the United States, which is currently going on, or at a subsequent, in a subsequent phase with the Afghan government.
Okay. Let me ask you very finally, Madiha, are we going to see Pakistan be in this...
Excuse me, can I interject 1 second? Can I interject 1 second?
Because go ahead, Omar Samad. Sorry, Madiha. Go ahead, Omar Samad. You want to respond directly?
I heard you ask him, and he had made some kind of reference and analogy with the British and the Soviets. How pathetic that is to compare what is happening today when a group of armed militants who are grouped and they are assisted outside of Afghanistan are coming in and finding some level of support as a result of disenchantment or dissatisfaction with some localities, and they kill Afghans continuously on a daily basis. Look at the numbers. Who are they targeting? And then to say that this is resistance, and then to say that this is the same as the Afghan resistance to the Soviets. We know what happened during the Soviet occupation. During the Soviet occupation, the whole Afghan nation was resisting against that occupation with very few exceptions. And Pakistan was on our side, and so was the rest of the world. And we defeated the Soviets. The Taliban were not there. The Taliban emerged 5-6 years later. And they were the children of refugees who were put through this jihadi madrasa system, and then used in Afghanistan to take power for the benefit of one side. And there was no chance given to the Afghan people to express their opinion as they are trying to do nowadays, but they are still being attacked. And what happened to the British was a totally different context. It was colonialism, and it was a time when Afghanistan, was trying to make sure that it's not colonized. So let's not compare apples and oranges here. And today what is happening is that you have the overwhelming majority of Afghans on one side, and you have a very small minority trying to destabilize. That is not resistance.
Okay, and I'm glad you both had your say on this issue, because I have given Saad Muhammad an opportunity to clarify that. Let me ask you very finally, Madiha, are we always going to see Pakistan play this kind of enigmatic role for as long as there are foreign troops in Afghanistan?
So Pakistan's enigmatic role comes from certain paranoias that it has about being surrounded on both its borders, Western and Eastern, by Indian influence. So Pakistan, as you mentioned, holds on to these strategic assets, if you will, by giving sanctuary to them. That's not to say that they're propelling an insurgency in Afghanistan, but as long as Pakistan remains threatened and as long as those incentives are fed, President Trump said he actually said we would like India to play a role in Afghanistan. That feeds Pakistan's paranoias. However, I actually think there are a lot of things that need to align. Pakistan is not the only sort of player that needs to align itself for peace in Afghanistan. The Taliban have to work with the Afghan government, not just with the United States, as they have done. We've seen that that Ashraf Ghani has been blindsided by the meeting that has taken place between Zalmay Khalilzad and the Taliban officials, because the Afghan government was not brought into this meeting. So those three parties, along with Pakistan, so sort of four parties need to sit together at the table and work something out. If it can be worked out, and if Pakistan can be assured that its western border remains safe, Pakistan's incentive, it is in Pakistan's own interest for its internal security for Afghanistan to have peace.
Okay.
So I don't see it as something that cannot be sorted out, but a lot of things need to fall in place for it to be sorted out.
Okay, and in a couple of moments, we're going to take a closer look at the superpowers' role in this unresolved conflict. I'm going to thank you for the moment, Madiha Afzal and Brigadier Saad Muhammad, and Omar Samad, Mr. Ambassador. You stay where you are. We'll be back in just a moment.